Hour 3 of the Common Good-A-Thon. Here we go. My question for people, you ever do this like party, questions, just like, hey, are you somebody who does this or that? One of my questions is, when you hold up 3 fingers, how do you do it? I'm one of these. So first 3 fingers with my pinky. Other people go with the hold their index finger down. So Chris will ask you that in a minute, but anybody in the chat, let us know. When you do 3, do you hold down the index finger or do you hold down the pinky when you show 3?
This is when you've got to fill 12 hours of content. 3. This is the kind of stuff that you end up talking about, right?
Top-notch content here, huh?
It's just basically a Bruce Springsteen song. I'm just tired and bored with myself, But Chris, we're not tired and bored with you. Are you a index finger down or a pinky finger down when you do?
Hold the pinky. Holding the pinky seems normal here.
It does seem. Hey, you're running for office. You're going to be the next congressman from the 17th congressional district of Pennsylvania.
Well, I hope you've knocked on wood there. We've got some work to do before that's the case, though we're feeling good and hope and expect to win. But next few months are going to be hard work to get there.
Tell us the story. How did you get into this? How does somebody like you end up saying, you know what, I'm going to put it all in. I'm going to do this. I'm going to lean in hard this way and make this call and sacrifice all the things that there are to sacrifice, to run for office.
Well, look, I think those sacrifices are worth it, right? You're asking your neighbors, your friends to give you a chance to represent them, to go serve. And that's where I start. And my background was in the military. After growing up around here, I went off to Annapolis, served, as an officer for 5+ years. And so for me, it's about public service, right? That's why I got into this thing. I think we got to have a government that works for all of us. And I'd like to have something to say about that. And so that's what drove me to do it. Hopefully that doesn't make me a crazy person for wanting to go be in Washington, but I think our government can do better by folks, and that's really what drives me to get down there.
Have you always thought about people who run for Congress as public servants? A lot of people in their minds, they're like, oh, people in Congress, they're all a bunch of crooks. It's self-serving. They just do this for, the conversation that goes on. Mm-hmm. Some people just get infected with that from a very young age, and some people don't. They get they're taught a different story. When you were growing up, did you think about politics, or how did you think about the people running for public office?
I'm sure from a distance I imagined these folks as being public servants, but also I think like most people had a healthy dose of skepticism. I think there's distrust for a reason, and too many politicians are part of that, to be honest. I'd like it if we had as a country, right, a better sense of folks who are serving for others, or fighting for the common good, which I talk about. I love that that's great. You guys talk about. I wish that were more the norm. And we've got some work to do, big we, as a country, as people in politics, to earn back that trust, I think.
Yeah. What is happening in your particular race? Give us the background. Who's in the seat now? Who you're running against? Give us the context.
So fellow Democrat and veteran Connor Lamb has been the incumbent here. And Connor, I'm sure many folks know, stepped into our Senate primary, didn't make it through in May. And so I am trying to hold the House seat here, Pennsylvania's 17th district. Mm-hmm. It's a very competitive seat. President Biden got about 53% of the vote here. So it gives you a sense of this is one of the true, battleground districts. And it's going to be hardly fought or a tough fight. The national Republicans and Democrats both are going to put some energy here, and I'm just focused on this district, the people who live here, and trying to do right by them.
Yeah, we have a real fondness for that district. We've spent time there. We've been cheered and jeered by the constituents. It's a happening place when it comes to political pressure. There's it's a crucible of engagement.
Yeah, and look, I think we are used to this in Western PA, right? Whether it's these midterms, whether it's the presidential cycle, even our state and our local races, I should say, we get outsized attention because I think we are a good bellwether for where this country is. And I don't know, I think we have good radars for sniffing, BS from folks, which makes us good. I think good tests for where candidates are and where the parties are. And no surprise that we're a competitive part of the country, to me.
Yeah. So, Chris, I know it's not your race, but there's a lot of eyes on Pennsylvania, as there always is. But um, headed into the election in November, because of the Senate race and the governor's race, where it really feels like Trumpism is on the ballot, white Christian nationalism is on the ballot, this extreme authoritarian republicanism is on the ballot. Um, what's your sense of of what that's like, and is Pennsylvania a bellwether for where we're at as a country and the direction we're going to be headed as a country?
Look, I think and expect Pennsylvania to give us a good sense of where we're headed. And I think people around here, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, Independents, they're going to reject that extreme version of, as you say, Christian nationalism, of an extreme right wing view of this country and what we ought to do for people. And I'll be frank, the top of the ticket on the Republican side for governor, Doug Mastriano, is firmly there. I mean, this is a person who took the same oath I took in the military, and participated in the January 6th insurrection, right?
Yeah.
This is someone whose view for what this country ought to be is wildly out of step with where I think most folks are. And we're going to have campaigns, my race, statewide, that are going to put to the test whether that vision, I think is a toxic one, it's a divisive one, can succeed. And I don't think it can. And frankly, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it doesn't here.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
There's a lot of, you as somebody with a military background, you can see how politics borrows military language. There's a lot of war talk. There's a lot of battle, all that stuff sort of gets carried over. We tend to do it in our society as a whole. And I have found that people who've been in the military and have been in conflicts tend to be the people who don't want to talk like that, right? They don't want to invoke and try to use that language because they know the real pain of war and of this. That feels important for us not to make our fellow citizens an enemy, and for it to feel like there's something that we want to move toward, and we call that the common good, the thing that's kind of sort of work for all of us, where everyone has enough and no one has to be afraid. But boy, the tactics of politics feel like it's zero sum, that someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. And it's a fight for, and there's days where I feel like this is a fight for the existential reality of the democracy of America. It's easy to get caught up in all of that. How do you deal with that as a candidate in a campaign, and with all the language and fundraising and sort of all that's going on? Like how is that for you with such a close relationship to the impacts of that narrative when militaries and war really have to be something that is such a deadly and dangerous tool that we have at our disposal?
You're right. That language is very common. The way we talk about politics. Watch cable news for 15 minutes. That's how they tee up these campaigns, right? It's always a fight for something. And look, it's not to say that we shouldn't be invigorated by a fight, right? For values, for our country. We are. I am. But I think it's sometimes, the rhetoric can be a little bit out of step with where you're trying to meet folks. You're trying to present a vision, I at least try to, of here's what I want this country to do right by folks. Here's what I think we have in common. Here's where our shared prosperity, our democracy is worth us coming together on. And frankly, a district like mine, which is rare these days, an actually competitive district where you have to reach voters who aren't just on your team, it encourages candidates to reach those voters. When you have not competitive races in districts, well, you just, you're fighting for your base and nothing else. And,
Nice.
I've got to earn votes across the board, as does anyone who runs in a competitive district like that. I think that's healthy for our democracy.
Yeah. Yeah. You make a great point, Chris, that there are fewer and fewer and fewer competitive districts around the country. Some estimates are there's like only 15 of 435 congressional districts. Maybe 15 of them are competitive, that the rest are either because of demographics, because of gerrymandering, because of whatever the reason might be, are, we know they're either going to be blue or they're going to be red. And you're in one of those critical districts that will determine, who controls the House of Representatives. And is it, does that invigorate you, or do you just like feel the weight of the pressure? Chris, I'm basically saying the future of democracy rests on your shoulders.
Are you ready?
So hopefully you're up for it.
Look, the answer is yes. It's both of those things.
Yeah.
It certainly motivates me every morning when I get out of bed to go put in the work to try to earn votes. And it also, it raises the stakes for my election here, my campaign. Absolutely. I think both of those things are healthy motivators. And given where our system is, there are only going to be a few of these kinds of districts. Mine's one of them.
Yeah.
I'm going to do everything I can, to make the case for folks for supporting my race and my campaign and what's at stake. Not just in an individual district, but in, the House of Representatives.
Yeah. Chris, I want to share a story with you that involves this sign that I went over and pulled off of my wall that I keep up. These are signs that we would carry around in our work. And it says, I will vote faith, not fear, hope, not hate, and love for all. So we would sell these signs, or to sell them, we'd give them out at our campaign rallies. We did an event in your district. There were a group of people who showed up who disagreed with then Connor Lamb, who was running, and we were supporting, in his view of a woman's right to access abortion. So they had a big protest going on during our event, and we negotiated out a lot of the yelling and screaming so we could have our event and then do their thing. So a woman came up to me who was part of that crew, and she was making her point very, very forcefully. And I said, look, I think you're pro-life, and I just wonder if then that means, that you want to stop capital punishment, that you want to fund early childhood education, that you want to be sure to get guns out of places where they're going to harm children, like these. And she goes, you keep saying that stuff. And no, I'm against abortion, but I'm not against capital punishment, and I'm not against guns. In fact, if you and any of your Black Lives loving friends were to come into my house, I'd shoot you dead with a gun myself. Okay. So I keep in a conversation with her. A few minutes later, she says, so I totally disagree, but I really love that sign that you have over there. Can I take one of those with me? And I said, well, actually, those are only for people that make a $25 donation. She goes, okay, goes to her car, gets $25, gives us the donation, and takes the sign home. And I was struck, Chris, by the fact that she reads, faith, not fear, hope, not hate, love. I think it once said love, not lies. We had two versions of it. And she said, no, I want to put that sign in my yard, because she thought that Democrats were peddling fear and were peddling lies. And it was this moment that came from your district where I thought, boy, there are people who want faith, hope, and love and good. Now, we couldn't have disagreed more. She threatened my life and people around me. I mean, it was intense, while she's a pro-life person. So that was just all rather confusing. But I don't know, internally, we all see ourselves as the hero and the good person, and we want goodness, and we want faith, and we want hope, and we want love. And it feels like some candidates' best bet is to show the division, and some candidates' best bet is to pull it all together. And I'm just wondering how you respond to that story. Have you heard similar things? And is this sort of the moment where you find yourself having to lean into the very best of people's intentions and try to bring them along to a different conclusion?
I think and hope so. And look, I think lots of people in my region, certainly, right, believe in those basic ideas: faith, family, hope, and love, right? Those are universal ideas that don't, you don't have a monopoly on that based on your politics, I don't think. And the fact that we have, I don't know, as a country, too many people think that you can only have those values with a certain political stripe is a problem. And, I believe, and there's a unifying force around reminding folks of these are not, no one's got a monopoly on wanting to love their family or worship as they see fit. And that fighting for a government, I think, that serves all of us, that puts our shared prosperity and our dignity, first, that furthers those values. That's at our core, the kind of message I'm trying to bring to this campaign.
Yeah. Are you surprised when you meet people who've never voted for a Democrat before, and they're saying, I think I'm going to do it this time. Yeah. Are you meeting people like that? Is that something your
Yeah.
campaign is bringing aboard? And what's the backstory on those folks?
Look, every person is different, every voter is different, but I'll be at events and I'm seeing folks again, whether they're Democrats or Republicans or something in between. I'm meeting voters of every kind, and certainly I have plenty of reactions of, well, you're not getting my vote, but I also have plenty of I will, in a surprising and a good way, and it varies. Oftentimes we'll have a connection over maybe shared military service, or you know a union member who's not been supporting Democrats, and I talk about my commitment to labor and union way of life, and they're going to give me a chance. Or I could, you name it. I think that is a too rare part of campaigning, of finding some common ground and actually, hey, here are my values. Here's why I'm fighting for what I believe in, and in fact, it's closer to where you might be. So I want those interactions. I think they don't happen enough given the age of TV and digital ads.
For sure. Yeah. Chris, one of the questions we're asking everybody who's coming on is, tell us about the good that you're up to in the world. And certainly, like that's kind of the campaign, but what, as you kind of evaluate, your work and your journey right now, how would you describe kind of the good that you're up to in the world right now?
Well, it's hard. This campaign does consume everything, right? You ask any candidate, Rob, you know this, right? It ends up taking up all of the space, or too much of the space in your life. But for me, it's part of my broader vision of what I hope to accomplish in this life, and that's serving others. I chose as a 17-year-old to go into the military as a way to serve for those years. And so that's been the thing that's most important for me. I hope and think this campaign is part of that. And that means putting other people, first, and what serves our community, right? The body politic, this group of people we call neighbors in the country. That's what I hope I'm doing in this campaign. And if I win, I'll do in Washington. That's the reason I, am in this. And frankly, it's what drives a lot of my life.
Yeah. Listen, we're doing this Good-A-Thon because we're trying to raise money for the work that we do and bring some awareness to that. But we also want to make sure that we turn the spotlight on you, Chris. And if folks are listening to this and saying, yeah, you know what? My district's not competitive. It's bright red or it's deep blue. I really want to help someone who has a chance to, help hold the House of Representatives for Democrats, and I want to be on board either financially or as a volunteer. How can they find you, Chris? How can they be a part of the campaign?
Well, one, thank you. Come on over to chris4pa.com. You can follow us on all your social channels. Same thing at Chris4PA. We'll welcome any and all help, and it doesn't have to be writing big checks. You can send some postcards or texts or make some calls, or if you're in the area, come knock doors. It all helps. It all means a lot, frankly, for a campaign that's driven by and funded by people. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, we're the kind of friends that when you say stuff like that, we really do show up. So we are going to be showing up in your district and sending postcards and coming around and holding some events and doing that. And if anybody watching wants to join us, because it's always better to do that kind of thing with a friend, keep an eye on our calendar, and we'll be showing up, because this is one of the districts that really matters. And it's just one of the places, every part of industry in the United States has its little headquarters. You think of music in Memphis or Nashville, and you think of, I don't know, suntan lotion in Florida, or banking in South Dakota and Connecticut, and Silicon Valley out in California. And there's just certain places where politics sort of sets up for its future. And Pennsylvania is one of those states, and parts of Pennsylvania, especially just outside of Pittsburgh, and specifically the 17th Congressional District, is one of those places. It's the center of where the new version of democracy for the future is being tried and being worked out. So congratulations on your run, and it's kind of fun for you to be in a place that just matters so much. And we're going to show up and hopefully have some impact there, and to learn a lot about who the people of this country are and how we can go forward.
Well, thanks, guys. It was a real treat to hang with you. I hope you've got some energy for the hours ahead. I know it's a long day. Hang in there.
Yeah,
Do
we should
great
probably
stuff.
get a little sunlight. It would be a good idea. I
Yeah.
should probably open a window in here and not just go. Well, congratulations again. Thanks for spending a little
Thank
bit of
you,
time with
Chris.
us.
Thank you. See you guys.
Oh
Once
man,
again, just the best.
Doug, do you watch the show on Netflix? Somebody Feed Phil.
No.
It is it's a guy named Phil Rosenthal. He was the executive producer of Everybody Loves Raymond, and he travels around the world and eats food, and it's a
Wow.
travel food show, and
Great
and
idea.
Phil is an Enneagram 7 who it is one of the most joyful people you have ever seen, and like multiple times an episode he will eat something and he will go, "Oh, come on!" Because it's just like he can't contain the joy of how he feels consuming that food. And
Wow.
that's how I feel after every one of these candidate conversations that we have. I'm like, these people are too good
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
And Chris Jones that we talked to last hour, Chris DeLuzio who we just talked to, I'm just like, come on. These people are so great.
And it's not just the Chris's. We're going to find that same thing from Wendy and from Hillary and from Patrick. There's going to be a whole crowd of them.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, thanks for any of you that are joining in the Common Good-A-Thon. We're asking politicians, newsmakers, screenwriters, actors, musicians, documentary subjects to tell us about the good that they have going on in the world. There's a lot of people are funding, a lot of bad news, and you need to. That's what normal news is for. Around here, we like to call people to the common good too, and know that can drive us. And there's been a lot of movement that's been impacted by politics in the last, 5 years, and the consequences are high. They're real, and our positive goodness attitude around here is not because we don't take this seriously. Things are too serious not to take a common good attitude toward them. So we're asking people to make a financial contribution. We're trying to match a $50,000 matching promise. So every dollar up to $50,000 gets doubled. I know a lot of people use that as a shtick. We do too, but this time it's real. So we'd really love for you to, do what you can.
Yeah.
We
If somebody
put our own
wants to give,
parameters
Doug,
on ourselves. And
if somebody wants to give, where do they go? What do they do? How do they do it?
well, you can write a very large check and drive it over to 6301 Peacedale and deliver it like I've won the Publishers Clearinghouse is where our office is. You could go to Vote
That
Common
would be
Good.
so amazing.
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be fun? Have you ever? But by the way, have you ever tried to make one of those big checks? Not as easy as you might think. First of all, just getting a piece of that material and then having it look right. It's God bless anyone who's pulled that off. That's like when you get a check like at a
well
my
done,
friend
Ed
won a fishing competition and they live streamed it, and I watched it and they had big check there, and I thought, wow, that's awfully impressive. They pulled off that check. I mean, that's real thing. So you could drive the check over. You could go to votecommongood.com and make a donation there. If you really like Venmo, you can find Vote Common Good on Venmo. If you really like PayPal, you can go to Vote Common Good on PayPal and make contributions there. If you want to make a large donation that you want to be tax deductible, we also have our side of our organization that does messaging that's not quite as political, and you can receive a tax donation. So if you have a personal foundation, if you run money that you only want to give to tax deductible causes, we are also one of those. There's some other work that we do that's not quite vote for Chris, but it's make the common good the thing that drives you in your world. And both of those messages need to be funded. And both of those messages are things that we do in our two shared organizations. So you can go to votecommongood.com, greaterthings.us, find all that stuff. It's all there. If you're watching this, I'm betting there's a link down below. You can click on that link and that will take you there. You see that little ticker running down on the bottom there? That'll tell you can go to Vote Common Good You can also just watch all this on Vote Common Good. So if you have friends, family members, neighbors, people you don't care about, like coworkers, and you just want them to watch, and you know that they're not on Facebook or they're not on Twitter or they're not going to go to a YouTube channel, they can just watch it right on our website over there at votecommonggood.com, where there's a gigantic button that says make a contribution. But we don't just need your money. We also need your hope. We need your participation at different times. We're going to ask for a little time from a bunch of you. We want you to help us out, to send postcards, to make phone calls, to amplify some things. I want you to use all that influencer narrative that you have going on all the time for all this. And over the course of today, we're going to be introducing you to some candidates. And that includes our good friend, Wendy. Oh, and I see a message in here that says, "Oop, hang tight." So I was setting up that big rollover to Wendy. So maybe we're
listen. I want to mention something about Reverend Wendy, who's going to be joining us. Running for office is difficult and it's hard, and there's no guarantees. And Wendy offered herself as an alternative to someone who had been serving in office for decades. And she thought that it was important that voters in the District of Columbia have a choice. And her primary was about a month ago. Didn't go her way. She didn't win, which is, sad, because having Wendy in office would have been fantastic. But, oftentimes, things go different directions. And I wanted to have us, have the chance to talk to Reverend Wendy, to talk about the good that she's up to in the world now. That's not necessarily running a campaign anymore, but involved in other good in the world. So Reverend Wendy, thank you for being back with us. Thank you for running for office. Thank you for offering yourself in that way. How are you doing?
Well, hi, Doug. Hi, Rob. Thank you all so
Wendy.
much for coming over. As you can see, I'm in full rest mode, right?
Yeah.
I know I look a little bit different, but I had to take a break. I had been on the campaign trail nonstop for 18 months.
Oh.
And though, as was mentioned, it didn't necessarily go the way I had hoped, it still made an impact. And I am so grateful for having had the opportunity to participate in what really became a very sacred process.
Well, Wendy is both Rob and I have attempted runs for political office, and we're not elected. And we know firsthand, and also people just know as a whole, if the only reason you do anything is because it's going to work, well, that's a different kind of a deal than somebody who says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try. I'm going to attempt something. And, blessed are the triers. It's just really good to try things. And,
for they will experience the grace of God.
And the heartbreaking disappointment that never seems to really fully go away. Yes. And it's all of that, right? But that's, it's all that stuff they say about love, and to risk not is to love not, all that stuff. It's just really true. The human experience is that we try good and important things. And I am sure that there are people impacted by your campaign and by you running and all of that. And even if there wasn't, if there was nobody, if everybody was just like had no idea, it still is the right thing for people to go and try. And just, thank you for that, and for staying. I remember when we first had you on the podcast on an interview, I think we had to reschedule because you were working at a school.
Yes.
And because another staff person had to leave, you had to go and do this really important work in care. So in the middle of running for, trying to, for representation for people in Washington, D.C., you were also had your hands full with not only your own job at a school, which we all know how difficult that can be, but you were having to cover somebody else's job. So,
exactly.
You did. So.
Everything got thrown at me in this particular process. I that's why I said it turned out to be incredibly sacred in a number of ways. Both in its sort of motivation, for running in the first place, and just trusting that this is what God would have for me to do next. But then also the revelations about myself and what I was capable of. The capacities that I had, I really felt myself stretch and grow in this process. And the icing on top, of course, was that from the beginning, we wanted to win, of course, but we also had started out with a definition of win being more broad than just capturing itself. If we could motivate more voters to get involved in the process, if we could provide an option, as was mentioned, I ran against a 32-year incumbent who had only had 3 other challengers in the 30 years that she had been in office. And I said, doggone it, I'm running just for general purposes because voters deserve options.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
so every time, so we got out there and we did a wonderful job. I had a great team, but I tell you, on voting day, I got more phone calls and people sending pictures to me and text messages with themselves in the booth. I voted for you. Look, I voted. Those became my 4 favorite words. Was I voted for you, and that was because every time someone said that to me, that was a validation of having gotten into this process in the first place. I got in there not very well known at the time, and I had to not only establish myself as an option, but come to have people trust me enough that I was a credible enough option to vote for.
Yeah.
And thousands of people did that, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
And we are so proud of you. Wendy, I want to ask you maybe a difficult question, but we have seen over, oh goodness, years now, but it just feels like it continues to accelerate the scourge of gun violence in the country. And it feels like nowhere is safe now, from classrooms to churches, houses of worship, to parades, to businesses. It's just this tragedy that we all are trying to wrap our heads around, and super frustrated with the lack of action from our elected leaders. You had, right near the end of the campaign, at the end of June, just a few weeks ago, you were kind of touched in a personal way by gun violence when one of your students, a 15-year-old Chase Poole, was shot and killed. Would you talk about that a little bit, and what that was like, and what do we do? How do we fix this so that people can go to a parade and be okay, that kids can go to school and come home okay, so that students like yours, like Chase, can make it through the day and go home and go to bed at night? Like, how do we fix this? Do you have any idea?
Well, let me say this first and foremost, that there are both tangible things that need to be done and intangible things that need to be done. And if we're not even willing to do the tangible things, I don't even know how we begin to start on the intangible ones. I mean, common sense just says there's too many guns available, too readily available. You need look no further than the tragedy that happened in Highland Park on 4th of July, where an 18-year-old, 22-year-old now, but was able to go purchase the gun that his father apparently signed off on. It's coming out in the news now. His father signed off, as a reference for him to get this gun. And this was months after he had been, encountered with law enforcement over a threat to kill his whole family. So, and they confiscated 16 knives from this young man at that time. So if you've encountered a young man who had threatened to kill his family, mental health, or not, but to the point that you thought he was a threat to himself and others, and you confiscated 16 knives from his possession in that moment, and we yet still let this young man with that background be able to go in and purchase an assault rifle, what do we think is going to happen? You understand what I'm saying? So I'm to the point where some of that righteous indignation, Jesus flipping tables over and asking people, what are you doing? Like, help me understand how we just can't even do the common things, the tangible things, the common sense things. And so for me, I'm beginning to get a little frustrated on that end, because it feels like there are just clear, obvious steps that can be taken by our legislators, by our leadership, by our law enforcement, to just begin to even reduce the number of opportunities people have to open fire on us wherever we are. That being said, Chase, that was hard.
Yeah.
Chase was 15 years old, and yes, he was gunned down at a music festival, an outdoor music festival on Juneteenth that was happening that Sunday, Juneteenth, here in DC, a nice little go-go festival down in the popular area of town. And gunfire opens, the crowd scattered, and Chase was dead. And Chase was a sweet, loving, um, quiet young man, reserved, I should say, not really quiet, but reserved young man who had enrolled here at the school where I work. And I was able to get to know him a little bit, and his mother specifically, because his mother was really trying to help her son. Chase was not perfect. He had had some issues in his back past, and that's kind of, I work with students who struggle with truancy and attendance issues. But I wanted to help this mother because when she called, I could sense that in her spirit she was just trying to do whatever she could for her son, looking for support. Help me help my son. And so we enrolled him, and he was doing good, matriculating here, and didn't have too many problems out of him at all. So that morning when I got the call that it was him who had gotten killed, my heart went to his mother, because I thought, she, of course, as a mother, I know she's devastated, but here's a mother who was trying to save her son, and I'm sure she feels like in some way she failed. And so I wanted to go be with her and reassure her that that she did everything that she could, and I wasn't going to let them turn Chase into some kid out here raising himself or some thug or something like that. I wanted him to have worth and to have meaning, and so that was very hard. But I'll tell you this, and then I'll finish up on that, because I went to the funeral, which was just last Thursday, and what struck me, gentlemen, and these are the intangibles I'm talking about, to go into that church, beautiful church auditorium, jumbo screens with the memorial video playing, and things like that. I was so struck by the number of children, young people that were at this funeral. And again, I grew up in an era where young people didn't die unless it was, by accident, maybe a car accident, or, God forbid, I did have a young friend in high school commit suicide. But other than that, even when those happened, it affected the whole community. It was traumatic. Like, the school, we had to shut down, and everybody went to the funeral, and we just mourned because one of our students, a peer that our age, had passed away. And yet I walk into this funeral at this church, and there's children are sitting in there. And I thought to myself, how many of these have they attended?
Yeah.
Many. It's almost become normalized. It's almost like they were sitting in a movie theater, just kind of watching the same trailer play again. I thought about the compounded trauma that these students are experiencing, having to begin to process these experiences in the city and in the country as normal. This is not normal, and the longer we allow it to fester, there's intangible things that are happening to our kids. So we need to be able to reach them, but I can't reach them if they have to keep going back and forth to funerals. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Boy, that is just so spot on. I think about how in World War, well, in some other wars, the Civil War and then World War I and World War II, lots of people knew someone who died in the war, and it turned the American psyche about war. And Vietnam was even a bit that way. It's not so much the case now, but the thing you've just mentioned, people being, closely connected, or a person removed from someone who's dying of gun violence, boy, I would think that would move the American conscience. And I am just shocked that there seems to be no manner of murder that's going to turn people against the violent gun culture in this society. Just every group has been murdered, from Congress people to children to moviegoers, parades.
I knew when there wasn't unfortunately, when there wasn't enough immediate action taken after Sandy Hook, I knew we were in trouble. Because up until that point, we had not seen a mass murder of children like that, elementary
Yep.
school children. And I thought, okay, this has to be it. This has to be the straw that breaks whatever this camel's back is that is preventing us from doing, like I said, just the simple, tangible things. And even then, in light of that,
Yep.
no real particular changes were made, and I knew we were in trouble.
It's a strikingly, shockingly strong camel, this back that we, and I don't want to think about hurting camels, so I don't even know where I'm going with that analogy. Wendy,
Right.
we talked about you being a candidate. We've talked about you being a school teacher. We've talked about you being an activist. We haven't talked about you being a reverend yet. Now, we don't typically, we don't go around and ask reverends to run for office. We ask Christian people to vote for common good candidates, but when we find a reverend that runs for office, by golly, we just perk up. Tell us about your reverendship. What's your church thing? What's your pastoring role? How do you, lots of ways people are reverends. How are you doing it? And how have you done it?
It's interesting because I was just thinking about that before I got on here. So I started out ministry as a chaplain. I went to Howard University School of Divinity for seminary. That's where I graduated from. And I always had interest in pastoral care. I didn't necessarily feel called to preach, although I can. So I didn't feel called to pastor, I should say. I felt more led to pastoral care and family care and things like that. So I was a chaplain for a number of years. And then at Georgetown University Hospital, Johns Hopkins University, I was in the emergency room trauma chaplain. So I've seen it all, been there and done all of that. But then a small church here just outside of DC was looking for a transitional pastor. And lo and behold, I found myself in the pulpit pastoring at Open Door Metropolitan Community Church. That church was in the process of considering whether or not to close. And this was right before the pandemic. So they ultimately, once the pandemic hit, it was tough. And we ultimately made the decision to close. So it was then that I took a leave of absence to seek God for my next assignment, if you will. And that was running for office. So I am essentially on a leave of absence from pastoring while I was, running for office. Although I would do some guest preaching, and I have a couple of those. I still want to stay connected, right, to the source. So I am doing some guest preaching, but what I was thinking about before I got on here was that I still feel called to this public service arena. I'm not done. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not done by any stretch of the means. I'm resting and I'm recuperating and rejuvenating, but the energy and the desire to serve and help my city and serve people, I still need to redirect that energy someplace. So I was out at a vigil the other night in one of my, in my neighborhood for some violence that had happened there. I said, I don't have to be a candidate to stay in the fight. So, and then what dawned on me was, for now, DC, the residents and city of DC is my congregation. And this city is my church, if you will. I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it, because at some point, and this is just me, pastors, we're going to have to come out the pulpit anyway, because the fight is in the streets. Church membership is dropping across the board. So if the people aren't going to come to church, we're going to have to take church to the people.
Well, and your congregation there is it's hurting. It was attacked by violent mobs. It's DC knows its role in the society, that it's the place where we go to claim regress against our government, but normally not violent insurrections, which happened. And we're armed people. We're allowed to stay armed even when the president of the United States knew they were armed in Washington, D.C., where it's illegal to carry those kinds of weapons. So yeah, it's a crucial role that you're in the midst of.
Yeah,
exactly. And so I am just allowing the Spirit of God to continue to guide and direct and lead me. Here I am, Lord, send me, has always been a mantra for me. And so, yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Well,
You're gonna keep
remember
on.
us when you
You're
when
gonna.
you enter your glory. Remember our little organization. We'd love to have
Yeah.
your participation any which way.
Oh,
Yeah.
how could I forget you all? Thank you all for the support that you gave me. Rob was sending me nice, encouraging emails, that came seem to come like right at the right time, just things to just keep me, grounded and focused on what was really at stake here, but to also not sacrifice myself in the process, and maintain that balance and keep my spirit clear and motivated. So I just thank
Yeah.
you all for everything you're doing. I'm glad to be a part of this good-a-thon. Please give them money. I don't know if people are watching.
They are. I just
They
got a
are.
message
Yeah.
from somebody just now saying we're going to make a donation.
Yeah.
So they're watching, Wendy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Give them money. Money makes the world go round, if you will. And that they are doing good work, friends. They are literally manifesting their name all the time. And so please, you can feel comfortable and know that you will get some measure of a return, uh, you know, an intangible return even, for supporting folks who are trying to do the good thing. And they're definitely trying to do, you all are trying to do that.
Thank you, Wendy. Hey, listen, real quick before you go, if folks want to, follow you and so they can find out what's next, where can they find you on the internet?
So we have shifted over to my personal site. It should be live later today. We're waiting on that now, but they
Great.
can follow me at revwendyhamilton.com.
Okay.
All right. And so on there, that will be my personal website. It'll just kind of be updated with things that I'm doing in the community and getting involved in. Of course, I'm still on Twitter at RevWendy3, and you can find me. I'm still on all social media: LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all at Rev Wendy Hamilton now. And it's changed over from Rev Wendy for Congress to at Rev Wendy Hamilton. But that's where you'll
Awesome.
find me, still doing the
Oh,
same stuff.
you're a hope dealer, as you
That's
say.
it is what it
You're a
is. I
hope
can't.
dealer.
Wendy, we love you so much. Thank you
Thank
for coming on and chatting with us. Thank you for everything you're doing. And we are huge fans and behind you 100% and can't wait to see what happens next.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. And keep doing what you're doing, because it's making a difference.
We will. Thank you, Wendy.
I'm going to use a phrase I haven't heard since 1978, but keep on trucking. I don't even remember how they said that, but for some reason that just popped into my head. And
You just dated yourself, Doug.
remember
All
those
right.
shirts and hats with the keep on trucking? Like, what was that whole thing? God, I love the 70s for so many reasons. All right. Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks.
See you in a
Bye.
minute.
Hey, listen, Doug. Before we take a break at the bottom of the hour, like we do to refresh the stream, we play a little game on our podcast. For those that might not know, Doug and I have a podcast on Tuesdays where it's a
You don't know. We don't just do this for 12 hours in one day. We do it hours and hours a week. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a good time on there. We have a little game that we've played a few times, and that is a game where I show you a video clip that you have not seen, and we get your reaction to that live. And so
We got
I'd
one?
like to. Yeah, we got one. I hope you have not seen this. I don't think you have. I hope you have not seen this. But I want to show you a video clip of, we had Chris Jones on earlier. His opponent in the gubernatorial race is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was Donald Trump's press secretary for a number of years. And on election night, she won the Republican primary and gave a speech. It happened to be the same day as the shootings in Uvalde, and I just want to show you a little clip of something she said in her speech.
Jesus. Okay.
We will make sure that when a kid is in the womb, they're as safe as they are in a classroom, the workplace, a nursing home, because every stage of life has value. No one greater than the other.
You want to get that first sentence again? Hit it again, Dan.
No, I got it.
We will make sure that when a kid is in the womb, They're as safe as they are in a classroom, the workplace.
We want to make sure that when a kid is in the womb, they're as safe as they are in the classroom. Like, look, you may have picked your rhyme because you thought it was cute, and you might think that your job is to protect the wombs. It's just shocking.
That was the day that Uvalde happened, after the shooting
And
in
you shouldn't
Uvalde happened.
need Uvalde to remind you that children have been shot and killed in classrooms. That
Yeah.
you know that classrooms are places of danger. School shootings, for the love, is one of the things that we talk about. It's just well, thank you for that. That's a great that's a great treat.
If you need another reason to
vote for
support
Chris
Jones, there it is. There it is.
But look, you know, say what you want about these people. They're somehow, you know, we say it often that everyone pitches themselves as the hero, hero or victim. Very rarely is the perpetrator. Like, very rarely is somebody like, I'm the wrongdoer in the story.
Yes.
I might have been harmed, or I might be the hero, but I'm very rarely the one that, you know, you should place the blame on. Somehow this world sort of gets what you're doing is protecting children. That's right. And you know what, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, God love you, you little light of the world. You know, but not every light of the world should be the next governor of Arkansas, and she certainly shouldn't.
Yep.
Go ahead, let's work to make children safe everywhere. That would be great. That would be really, really great.
Yeah.
Like, if your idea is that that's where children are safe. All right.
So I'm
literally get to ask the question that I'd never been able to ask in my life. Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
This is a live stream, folks.
All right. We got Gretchen Barton in the green room. Talk
Hey,
about letting the dogs
literally
out.
a green room.
I don't even know what that means. You know, Gretchen, there's a lot of times we have to hear about all sorts of conflict and nonsense. And then sometimes we get to hear about the greatness of the work of Gretchen Barton, working for this fabulous organization that we love to partner with, the New Moral Majority, paying attention to faith voters and what they're up to. Can you give us a couple of minutes of what this goodness is? You know, we were just on a call before our 12 hours of common goodery with, you know, here going on. There's a bunch of good things going on. Rob has to run off for a second, so he's going to disappear, not because he doesn't care, but because we have to all face ourselves, and literally has to go let the dogs out.
No, absolutely.
Gretchen, I love you. You're one of my favorite people in the world, but this isn't, as a Clevelander, this is entirely too much Pittsburgh for me. After we had Chris DeLuzio on, now Gretchen, I got to bounce. I love you, Gretchen.
Love you too. Bye. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, we just did this great study in field that I'm really excited about. We studied evangelicals who moved from voting for Trump to voting for Biden. And we found out a lot of great insights that I think are really important for us to think about as we hit the midterms and even in 2024. You know, oftentimes we think about evangelicals as this larger cohort that is untouchable by Democrats or independents, that they're just this way. And candidly, I grew up that way. So I get it. Like, there's that whole idea of like, you're a pro-lifer, you know, you're into guns, God, all that jazz. But there's actually a substantive cohort, and you know this better than anybody, and I think a lot of people should know about it, that, you know, it represents, gosh, at least 5 million for sure, gettable voters, up to 12 million. I mean, a whole bunch of people that really want to be connected with on a deeper level. You know, when they voted for Trump initially, they thought that he was going to deliver on a lot of things that they actually ended up voting for Biden for the same thing. They're looking for that community. They're looking for the country to come back together. They're looking for transformation. They're looking for restoration of that whole country is sitting on the hill. They're looking for things like infrastructure and healthcare and being able to pay, you know, for things. But most of all, they're really in pain when it comes to the country being so disconnected, and they don't have a political home. They don't feel comfortable with the MAGA Republicans. They don't feel comfortable quite with the Democrats because they haven't been invited in. And we really think that they should be invited in.
So I was trying to Google how many votes Trump lost Georgia by. It's like 11,158 or something. I think
Yeah.
about 537 votes. That was the difference in the presidential race in 2000. That's the number of votes that Bush was declared the winner by in Florida. You think about 30,000 votes, here and there. And the political wins of our country, I think, whatever, 35 or 40,000 total votes spread over 4 states in 2016 changes so many of the Supreme Court decisions that are going to be made for the next generation.
That's right. It's
So when
absolutely.
you say there's 5 million, 7 million, 12 million gettable, movable voters, and people are like, well, what's the point in that?
There's a
Just
point.
like to say the
And
numbers.
Yeah. It's about winning elections, and we can move people and we can connect with people. And it's important not to go, oh, you're this kind of person, therefore I can't talk to you. And I
Yeah.
think that that's really one of the beautiful things about Vote Common Good. It's all about connecting with people on a deeper level, on a values level, and really seeing people human to human, not seeing like, oh, you're this or you're that, but going, what do you value? What are the common good things that we can align on, and how can we bring everyone forward for a better world? So
And look, and people change in our society, and this is why your studies are so important, because it's easy to talk about the past and to be clear, because you're so quick with this language because you know it so well. When you say we were in the field, what you meant was did surveying, did polling, asked people questions, and a particular kind of questions, to all of a sudden find out a lot of things. There's a period of time where people would just think things like, well, I don't really care what the schools are like. And then, they have children and they start worrying about the schools, or I never really cared about the deals that you got from, AARP. But, now I'm like, hey, that's actually a great discount at the local
I hear
local
that.
restaurant.
Join the AARP. I heard even if you're under 65 as a
Even
fun
if you're under
tip.
60, as it turns out, yeah, you turn 55 and they send you the card and they say, welcome aboard. But what they're doing is they're saying like, hey, we don't need you when you're 40 to care about the AARP. We want you to care when you're 55, because something happens. You just start caring about other things, or you have children you care, or I guess you turn 55 and maybe you stop caring about the schools. I don't know, however that all goes. But sometimes these voters who've been long-term voters in one way, just something happens. Something changes, and all of it. And what you want is someone to send you that card and say, welcome aboard. We'd love to have you, and that's the kind of thing that we're trying to pay attention to and help people pay attention to, because it would be great if someone's religious identity did not feel like it came with a political identity. That seems like it would be a good thing. That the two weren't linked. So refined as they are. We only have a minute here, unless you want us to hang on and talk with Alma Ruth. You have to hang on through our little refresh, which you're welcome to.
A minute more.
So if you can do one more minute, I'll ask you this. What's the one thing that you now know after spending all this time, or what's one of the things, is a better way to say it, that you now know about spending all this time in interviews and conversations, because you do a particular kind of polling, that you're really glad you know, and you wouldn't have known had you not done these interviews?
Truly, how much of a heart that these evangelicals have for human rights, for people being treated well, for kindness, and also, on the opposite side, how irritated they are by cruelty, by chaos, by dysfunction. They want the country to get along. They want people to be, coming together and moving forward, and and there's a lot of opportunity to connect with them on a meaningful level. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Gretchen. Thanks for your work. Pop in with us for another minute or two if you want to, as we keep going. We're about to start hour 4. So if you're watching this online, you want to keep watching, it's going to either refresh where you are. If you're watching on YouTube, which is where we hope you're all watching, go over to YouTube if you're not yet. Or on our website, it will refresh with a new video. We're going to be back in just a minute. It takes a second to shut this off and start a new one up. We're going to be back with Alma Ruth, who works in McAllen, Texas, and Reynosa, Mexico. She's been one of our partners in our immigration work that we've been able to participate in. So I want you to hear about what's happening and going on there. So we're back with Alma Ruth, and let me tell you who else we're going to be back with Alma Ruth, and then with Hillary Skolton, who's running in Michigan. She's going to be on, and she's going to be the next. this woman
Powerhouse.
from Grand Rapids area. All right, so
Jeez,
we're going to
man.
be back with those two here in a minute on the Common Good-A-Thon, and we'll see you in a second.
See you later.